लाइव है।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर। अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदर रसूलुल्लाह, अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदर रसूलुल्लाह। हय्या अलस्सलाह, हय्या अलस्सलाह, हय्या अलफलाह, हय्या अलफलाह। अल्लाहु अकबर, अल्लाहु अकबर, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह।
अशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह वहदहु ला शरीका लहु व अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदन अब्दुहु व रसूल। अम्मा बअदु फअऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम। बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। The first verse I want to recite is from chapter 4, verse 135. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qisti syuhada'a lillahi walau ala anfusikum abil walidaini wal aqrabin in yakun ghaniyan aw faqiran fallahu awla bihima fala tattabi'ul hawa أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تردوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. O you who believe, be maintainers of justice, bearers of witness for Allah, even though it be against your own selves or your parents or near relatives, rich or poor. Allah has a better right over them both. So follow not your low desires, lest you deviate. And if you distort or turn away from the truth, surely Allah is ever aware of what you do. The next one is chapter 33, verse 70. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا. O you who believe, keep your duty to Allah and speak straight words. And lastly, chapter 85, verse 7, where God points to nature and then ends by saying, وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ. And they are witnesses of what they do with the believers. That the whole of nature is a witness to what is happening and what is done. See, the Holy Quran can be taken at many levels. All depends on what you want to do. You can take commandments of the Holy Quran, teaching of the Holy Quran at a theoretical or philosophical level. You can take it as practical commands which tell us to do something or not to do something. You can look at the commands and teachings of the Holy Quran as applying to an individual, or apply them at the level of a group, a jamaat, or the level of a nation or whole ummah. But in the final analysis, I find the commands and teachings of the Holy Quran apply to the whole humanity. They're addressed to the whole humanity, not just Muslims. And in fact, whether they recite the kalima or not, people who follow the teachings of the Holy Quran are successful. And there are many examples of this. We can go back and we look at the first verse that I recited. O you who believe, be maintainers of justice, bearers of witness for Allah, although it may be against your own selves, parents, or near relatives, rich or poor. And if you distort or turn away from the truth, Allah knows what you're doing. So you can say, that's addressed to an individual, because it starts off, oh, you who believe. But shouldn't a group seek to maintain justice? Shouldn't a nation seek to maintain justice? If injustice is being done within a group or within a nation, shouldn't people in that nation speak out against that injustice? Is it right, or would it be right for a nation to lie about what it does or what its allies do? And also, if they speak the truth, do they speak it in a straightforward way or use double meaning words, complex expressions which may be distorted or give the wrong impression? Like the seer, they go from street to street shouting out, we can read palms and we can do this and we can do that. And you take your daughter or daughter-in-law to the man and you say, she's pregnant, will it be a boy or a girl? And the seer says, boy, not girl. So if a boy is born, he will say, I told you so. I said, it's a boy, not a girl. And if a girl is born, he will say, didn't I predict that? I told you. Not boy, a girl. Is this the sort of truth that we want to speak to people? And what happens if you do that? It may be a very clever way of justifying yourself, but eventually people lose faith and trust in that person and that political system and that organization that hides the truth, or at worst, actually tells lies. There are many examples. 3 US soldiers were killed in an Iranian strike on a base in Jordan, and there were 3 American soldiers who happened to be at that base. And they attacked it because planes from that base were attacking Iranian positions in Syria. And 3 Americans happened to be there and they were killed. And Biden declared, if you harm an American, we will respond. And 85 Iranian facilities in Syria were attacked and destroyed, and a large number of people killed. Now let us look at occupied Gaza and occupied West Bank. What do we see? Nothing. American teenagers are killed. An American journalist is killed. American charity workers are murdered. Sorry, I said killed. They were murdered by IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. Now let's go back to Joe Biden's declaration. If you harm an American, we will respond. Joe Biden, where is your response? Have you bombed any facility in Israel to take revenge for the killing of all these people? British citizens are killed. And the ex-Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says, oh, well, it was just an accident. Very sad, but just an accident. Let's forget it. Well, why wasn't the death of 3 Americans at a Jordanian military facility an accident? Iranians didn't expect them to be there. They expected it was only Jordanians. So why wasn't that an accident? If it was wrong for Iranians to attack Jordan, why wasn't it wrong for the US and UK to bomb Libya to try and murder Colonel Gaddafi? Why does no one in the West speak about the fact that Colonel Gaddafi's child or children died in that murderous attack by US and UK. $40,000 Palestinians, out of which about 32,000 were innocent women and children, are killed. And no one raises an eyebrow in the West. But 7 Americans are killed. And suddenly there is uproar. And even during that uproar, Suhaila Braverman says, oh, it was just an accident. What further evidence of racism and Islamophobia is needed? What more is needed to prove that the Western political system despises Muslims? Shamima Begum, a silly schoolgirl, is smuggled to Syria, I think, and she joins ISIS and fights for them and so on, as do her friends, and she is deprived of her British nationality. Her children are left to die in refugee camps without medical facilities. But what happens to the British nationals who go to Israel to fight and die for IDF, who are involved in the murder of large numbers of Palestinian women and children? Are they allowed to return to the UK? Oh, yes. Are they arrested and put on trial in the UK? Oh, of course not. Question is, why not? Why not? When 1,200 Israelis, some of them were members of IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, die, everyone says they were killed by Hamas. So IDF wasn't responding. They just sat there, watched Hamas launch an attack and kill those Israelis without any response. We thought Israel had an Iron Dome system and other security measures and radar and satellite and so on to make sure that it doesn't happen. And yet for hours, Israeli Defense Force didn't move, didn't do anything. Can anyone believe that? Now we know Israeli Defense Force, IDF, reacted. So how do we know how many of these were killed by IDF? And in fact, some of these 1,200 were members of IDF. People might say, well, at the time they were killed, they weren't fighting for IDF. Well, let me ask you this. A member of Hamas is sent out by his wife to get some nappies for their child, or some milk for their child, or some groceries. He is not fighting. He's just going out shopping. If Israelis meet him and see him, are they going to shoot him dead or not? Will they be justified? You'll say, oh yeah, they were justified. He's a member of Hamas. So why doesn't the same argument apply the other way around? And it's not just the government. Let's take the example of Western media. Let's take the example of American media. The newspapers like the New York Times and Washington Post, who claim to stand for a free press. Killing of Israelis is 60 times more likely to be described as murder and genocide, etc., compared to Palestinians. Read these things with a critical eye. A Zionist goes out, and what happens to him? A murderous Palestinian, a murderous member of Hamas comes up and kills him and murders him and commits genocide. But when an Israeli kills a Palestinian child, a woman, they die. They must have very poor nutrition. The thousands of them, 40,000 of them, just died. Maybe had a heart attack, a brain aneurysm, or a stroke. Isn't that amazing? They just die. They're not killed by anyone. And the other interesting thing is that when it's a Zionist who's killed, when it's a Zionist who dies, we are always told, this is a child, that's his date of birth. This was a doctor, he was rushing to save lives. This was a woman, a housewife. From their collar size to their shoe size, we're told everything. But when it's Palestinians, the words like father, mother, innocent are never mentioned. This shows that the West doesn't regard Palestinians as humans, although they're reluctant to say so. But Zionists openly say that Palestinians are animals, they are not humans. And as I said, press announces 12,500 Palestinian miners died. Out of those 40,000, 12,500 Palestinian miners died. As I said, they had a collective heart attack, did they? No. The words like 12,500 Palestinian innocent children were murdered are never used. We are told this is emotive language. Yes, it is emotive language, but why do you use it when Israelis die? They're not killed either. They're not killed by Hamas, they die. They went to this party, danced too much, and exhausted themselves and had a heart attack and died. Peace in the world can only be established if, as the Holy Quran says, people speak the truth. Even if it's about themselves, about their family, about their country, whoever it is, and they speak it in a straightforward way. Not this fortune teller, when asked whether someone is going to have a boy or a girl, says boy, not girl. So as the Quran tells us to speak the truth, let me also add to the truth of Western Islamophobia, Western racism, Western hate of Muslims, which goes back many centuries, back to the time of the Crusades, and it hasn't lessened in any way. But let me say this, that the fault lies with the Muslims as well. We've hardly presented ourselves as model human beings to the West or to anyone else. We kill each other. Our governments run to Western governments for political support, for military support, and support to prop up whatever regime it may be in whatever country it is. Recently, in one Muslim country, an ex-prime minister who's dead, her letters to the American Secretary of State have been published, asking Americans to ensure that the neighboring country attacks her country, small attacks, not major wars, so that the armed forces are kept busy in defending her country and are not a danger to her rule and her government. What can I say? We should feel ashamed of ourselves. There are so many of us, and some of our countries have enormous resources. Some countries have enormous power. But we should be ashamed of ourselves that we run to others. We run to those who regard our co-religionists as less than human and ask them to prop up our regimes. Ask yourself, do you think when they receive these letters begging for support that they have any respect for you? They have nothing but contempt. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ملك بالرؤوف الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسول. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم واخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, qad qamatis salah, qad qamatis salah. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب إلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Allahumma salli Mubarak. Thank you for joining us for our Friday service. I hope you found it useful. May I remind you to pray for the whole of humanity in every prayer until we meet again next Friday. Whoever it may be, regardless of their race, their religion, their sect, their color, their nationality, please pray to Allah to keep the whole of humanity safe and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum. Khuda Hafiz. Goodbye.